My name is John Cornicello, and I welcome you to my series of live interactive photo conversations. You can check out the schedule at cornicello.com/conversations for dates and times of upcoming shows and links to previous shows and recordings. A programming note, there will not be any conversations on May 27th, May 31st, and June 3rd. I've got some family obligations and some traveling. I'll be offline. We'll be back on June 7th with Belaine, Hiram, Sumu, and Japan. But for today, my guest is Alan Dorow from SiteWelder. Alan is a photographer turned to building websites for creatives. So please welcome Alan Dorow.
Hey, thanks.
Let me just let a couple of more people in. Alan, tell us about yourself. Put you right there on the spot.
Well, all the way back to the beginning, born in Kansas. Was interested in photography since high school, became a photojournalist. I worked on a couple of newspapers back in the late 70s, early 80s. Graduated from Indiana University. Later moved to New York. I worked as an assistant and then picked up my own work. I worked for an agency called Archive, which was a spinoff from some of the Magnum photographers. And after they dissolved, I worked with another agency called JP Pictures, which was run by Jocelyn Benzaken. I think she'd worked with Sigma or maybe even Gamma overseas. And after I did that, I worked at the New York Times Magazine as a photo editor for a year. Spent another year working at RIT. I taught a few classes up at RIT as a visiting professor. Going through all that, decided that I wanted to go take up, part of the new world of interactive media. So I learned how to do some CD-ROM production and eventually got into the web, started doing work that way. And, it was all, in the end, it was really sort of about storytelling. I like to tell stories with pictures. So when the time came around, it was just sort of a natural segue to start our own company and do website production for people. So we started, really basically, I think we started, first year was in 2003. We actually had I think we showed up at Photo Expo, had a little booth up there. It's kind of funny at the time because my business partner, Mason Miller, he's the tech guru of it all. He was actually back behind the curtain there coding to make this thing work. So we had a website, but he was actually adding features as people would come up to the table and ask us questions about it. And I go, wow,
I could do that.
Kind of turn my head and he was already making it work back there. So that was pretty interesting.
Yeah. So when were you at RIT?
I was in RIT probably, I want to say 91 or 92.
Okay.
I filled in for a professor named Keith McManus. And I taught a photojournalism class, and then they wanted me to teach a second class. So that was, I think Photoshop was maybe version 1.5 or something at that point. So I was always about 2 weeks ahead of the students learning Photoshop. But I was, an early Photoshop guru.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned to me that one of the photographers you assisted in New York was Greg Heisler.
Right. So when I moved to New York, I didn't really know what to do there. I just knew I wanted to live in New York. The first 2 weeks I lived there was in the Times Square Motor Hotel. It was just awful. About 2 floors above me, a week before a prostitute had been decapitated up there. But I lived there for a couple of months. And I started sending out letters to different photographers. I mean, I actually just physically wrote letters. And I said, hey, I want to assist for you. And then I did some assisting for Gregory Heisler. At one point, I dropped a huge strobe off the balcony of some studio. I think it cost it's like a $4,000 unit or something. I think that was the next to the last time I worked for him. Too happy about that. And also worked for a photographer named Carol Sagers, who was the original Marlboro photographer. And as part of that, we traveled all over the American West And I got kind of excited to live out there and actually work for a newspaper out in Arizona for a couple of years, in the middle of all that.
So do you
So
want to show us some of your work?
yeah, I can I put together some of my work and some screenshots from some of the things we've done. So
Yeah, we'll learn a little more about you and then we'll talk about websites.
yeah, just a little background. I mean, I can at least show you some of my images that I shot in the past, give you an idea of what I was thinking about. When I was out in Arizona working for the newspaper, I just did a lot of traveling in northern Mexico, and I started working on a project called Border States. And this is a picture from Nogales, Arizona, at one of the bullfights there. It's down. And I shot on both sides of the border. So I shot down in Mexico and then in Arizona. So in Arizona, this was at a drive-in there one evening. Back in Mexico. So my real thing was I like to shoot black and white and color reportage. Just I was kind of a street photographer. This was in Ures, Mexico. And this is in Old Tucson, one of their shows there. Then when back in New York, I actually moved back to New York after living in Arizona, and I started working on a project, and it was really on boardwalks. This is out in Coney Island. So I would just, I'd usually just wait for the good light. I'd show up around 4 o'clock. And at that point, the other kind of interesting thing to me, I had it was a Canon F1. I could take the top off of it. And I actually looked down through the prism, sort of like looking through a rollie, but it's just a lot more easy way to shoot pictures that way. And I thought recently, with the way digital cameras work, it would work almost the same way, because you can flip the back to get a little different view. This is also Coney Island.
What years were these?
This is probably, I want to say 80, 88, 89, somewhere in.
The hapless Mets.
Yeah, well, that was what, 2 years? It was like 2 years after they won the World Series, I
Oh.
believe. Yeah, it's an awesome place. So I started moving down the boardwalks, and I actually shot this on assignment for the Philadelphia Inquirer magazine, but they wanted to do Atlantic City. That's when Trump still had his helicopter down there. And that's Atlantic City, and then they had the Atlantis. I think that's where they had the Playboy Club. I'm trying to remember. They used to have the ears up there. I shot this picture, but this was kind of around the time I was starting to think about some other ways of using photography. And then when I learned Photoshop, I had scanned all my other pictures together, and it was funny because I looked at my pictures and I thought, a lot of these pictures were kind of interesting, but they didn't make it because there just weren't enough elements together. So I started doing Photoshop, and it was a lot of fun. I think I did most of these. I called them animal crackers. This is back in probably 95, but I had a Power Mac 8100. I put them all together, and it was just awful. I probably worked on this image it probably took me about 12 hours to do it, because every time I would do it, somewhere in the middle of all this, Photoshop would just crash and the whole machine would crash. I'd have to start over again, and there were no layers. So you'd have to stick it on. And then if you wanted to make a shadow, you had to basically go select an area and then start darkening it or something like that. So it's really intricate, and hopefully, they end up looking actually fairly realistic. This is out Malibu on the pier. But even the shadows, come in. I felt proud of myself because, like, wow, I made the shadows work and made that giraffe come in behind the poles and everything. It's like, wow,
yeah,
that was cool. And back in Coney Island, and it's another picture. It just didn't really. It was kind of cool, but it didn't really work as a main image for that series, but it was better with the tiger in it. Then on Belmar Beach, New Jersey.
I know Belmar.
Did I get that right? I think it's Belmar.
Yeah.
Fillmore.
This was actually in Berlin.
Hmm.
So there's another one of those pictures, I mean, as photographers, you know how it goes. Like you're shooting pictures and very rarely do they really work the way you want them to. So I just had a lot of extras that were just natural scenes for this sort of thing. I think the couple was from down in Texas somewhere. This is the old World Trade Center building in that plaza they had.
Yep.
And the gorillas from the Barcelona Zoo, the albino gorilla. And Daytona Beach. So
Running with the rhinos.
man, it was awesome back then. Yeah, and you could drive on the beach and take your motorcycle and your rhino down there at the same time. It was very fun. Now, this is the only one I actually did completely, thinking that I wanted to do a digital image. So it was in Evergreen, Colorado. And I just sat there in the stands for about 3 hours. And at that point, I kind of figured out what I needed to do with the light to make it look realistic. So I just sat there in the same spot and I just kept shooting all the events there with about an 85 millimeter lens. And then later I just brought all these images together and started, pasting them into Photoshop to make this kind of collage thing. So at that point, we move on from all that and we wanted to do something online. So I created this with a friend of mine, Adam Stoltman. And I think the original name was, it was Story something, but we changed it to Journal E. We called it Real Stories from Planet Earth. And I set up a little server in basically my bedroom in the second floor of a townhouse we had here down in the DC area. And we just started publishing. And it was the most incredible thing. I had the server right in the room and had a little phone cord coming in. So it was really slow, but I could see all the people looking at it. I mean, it was the most incredible thing. I could watch the web server running and I'd say, oh my God, somebody just logged in from Czechoslovakia or whatever. And it was just magic. So we started putting these stories together and, I know a lot of photographers and people, they just started contributing their work and they wanted to put their work together for it. And so this was kind of the cover of that. Of course, really small at that point in terms of the size of the screen and everything. And we started changing the logos and stuff. We had a thing called Media Lab. And this was about the Masonic Home for Children in Oxford, North Carolina, that a photographer did. We've got another group of pictures together. And I actually I copy these. If you want to see old stuff like this, it's actually interesting. You can go to archive.org and you can see the Smithsonian Archives old websites. So if you type in an address for a website, you can actually see what they archived back at a specific point. And so in this case, I think this was probably about 2003 where I copied this from. But I was actually able to see what we'd put up at that point. But Without Sanctuary was a book of lynching photographs that was put together. James Allen had collected all these images and put them together. And this was actually, it was kind of an evolution towards something that looks more like actually what we do now, but using more modern web design and thinking about the different elements that you want to have on a website so that people can contact you. In this case, we had a little email the story to a friend, just a lot of things that would make sense to make it more interactive. We did another story with Scott Thody about, he had an amazing series of pictures of people living with HIV. But we did a big project. We did it with the New York Times and that did really well. It got a lot of attention. I got some nice advertising jobs out of that later. Found out how much money you could make from an advertising agency. Amazing. But it was just a really cool project. And we had a wall of names and then we could click on the different names and they would actually show information about them, a little memorial to them we collected. And we put a timeline up. And so a lot of this, we thought it was going to be stuff for a CD. But, I don't know, many of you remember this, but, but CDs were the big thing. In Barnes & Noble, they had a special section just to buy CD-ROMs and interactive things. And everybody seemed to be really excited about what was going to happen with interactive media and how it's all going to go on a CD. And it's really interesting because, it never went anywhere really, and then everything sort of went to the web. That made more sense. There we go. More from that project.
Mm-hmm.
But again, these are all things that kind of ended up morphing into stuff that we did for websites for photographers, actually. So we started SiteWelder. This is about, this says February 24th, 2005. It was a little bit further into it. And, just the early part of what we were doing. And early on, it was really, the websites are really small. So, you had to design things for basically, maybe a 13-inch monitor or something like that. I mean, the idea was that if everything was very kind of locked in. So if somebody's going to look at your website, we had to make sure that it fit within that screen. So everything was designed really small and, it's kind of really basic technology that made that stuff work. But the basic ideas were there. So you'd have a portfolio, different pages, some way of contacting the photographer, different galleries, and the pages started getting bigger. And then a little bit bigger, more, complex kind of things. But this was still about, this is still 15 years ago. We still have a layout that looks and works similar to the way this one does. Excuse me. So now, this is our homepage for SiteWelder, and it will expand to fill up the whole screen. Everything is now it's a completely different setup. And as you look through websites, there's a thing called responsive design, which is basically the idea that as you change the size of the screen, all the elements sort of flow together so that it rescales to fit what you're looking at on your monitor. So we've done a lot of that. Some of our current websites, again, these are just some screen snapshots. I'll show you some things, ideas of the way these things work, but we have full screen images on the homepage if you want. We actually use we call it the Burn Slideshow. So it'll zoom in and out of pictures as you go through. It looks really gorgeous. One of our users, David Burnett, that's his current homepage. When you use our stuff, there's a lot of different ways you can view the images or view the pages. So you can set up the homepage however you want. Then we have 9 main designs, and you can use any design you want, but then on the homepage, you can do a completely different setup as well. And then David's current version on his inside pages. David's amazing. He just, as much as he's adapted to shooting all his regular photography, his website's sort of been the same way. He's changed the look and feel so much, and he has so much work that he puts up, and great stories to go with it. Excuse me. Another photographer named Gary Parker, and this particular layout, this became really popular a few years ago. People wanted to have a lot of thumbnails, and then have the thumbnails sort of populate on the screen, and then be able to click on the thumbs and see bigger images as you go through. So another example of that.
So yeah, I had some people sending questions about websites. Do you want to get to that now, or you want to hold off a little bit?
Well, maybe if anybody's got any questions about what I was talking about, maybe I could answer those then. We might forget that.
Yeah, if anyone wants to pop into the chat or unmute and say hi.
Well, the one thing I want to say is your photographs are incredible. I especially like all of the color photographs. I just found them just tremendous, as well as your Animal Cracker series. Just absolutely tremendous.
Oh, thanks. Okay. I'll send you your checks on the way to you for saying that.
Credit card would be good.
No, right. Yeah. Yeah. It's, well, you know, you're all photographers. It's hard to really do the kind of work that you want to do sometimes and then get recognized for it separately. So, you know, that's definitely what I love to do, you know, ultimately is shoot those kind of pictures.
So I've got a technical question, if you don't mind. And I don't want to get too far into it. I've somewhat retired from building websites, and I've built a few for photographers, but more for plumbers and contractors. So I'm somewhat envious. How do you explain search engine optimization? Because that's one of the things that was always a challenge to explain. You know, I use Getty as an example sometimes, but how they sort of structure the meta tags for their stuff.
Sure.
But anyway, that was always a challenge. I'm curious how you approach that, because it's still a challenge.
So you're obviously, you know about meta tags. Did you, for instance, did you put text on your homepage?
Well, I did a lot of things then, but my challenge was more explaining to clients, smart people who are good at very like photography, like other stuff, about designing a web page for both users and for search engines, and why one site would be on the Google homepage and one site wouldn't be, because everyone, of course, wants their stuff, you know, to rank as high as possible for specific searches. And I see a little bit of discussion on SiteWelder about SEO, but with a lot of photographers doing similar stuff. And anyway, I'm curious to how you answer questions about SEO for your clients.
Well, if it's all right, it's a good segue. I can show you.
Yeah.
I can go into our setup and show you what we do, and maybe that'll answer some of those questions. When you're a user, I just set up a demo account here so I could show you what it looks like. I have to do it twice because I had to log back out. So when you come into our setup, we basically just break it down. You got account settings. I was talking about the home page, how you can have different homepage options. Right now, on this particular site, and also that's one of the reasons I asked you about putting text on the homepage. On this particular setup, it allows you to put text right on the homepage. Now, if you had like a full screen image, that's a little more limited, but it's really important just for SEO. When the search engines go through, they're going to hit your homepage first, obviously. So there's these different tags you use. They call them, in the early days of the internet, they build everything off of what they call H tags. So it'd be like H1 tag, they're header tags. It's kind of a dumb idea, but they thought the most important thing would be an H1 tag. Well, an H1 tag makes really big text normally. And then you go H1 all the way down to H6. Well, the H1 tag for SEO is the most important. So if we put this particular text here, if that was important for being indexed, if you put that as an H1 tag, it's going to get the most importance, and it's just going to show up a lot quicker and be more important to Google when they index your site. So there's things like that. The main thing to know about SEO is that you've got to have text. You know, the search engines aren't going to index pictures. I mean, except for, you know, putting stuff in Google Images, they don't know what's inside of the pictures. So you're going to have to describe those pictures somehow. So obviously having captions, talking about what you do, I mean, those are the big issues. Now, at the same time, you're talking about SEO. If I do, let's see, where's my, sorry, I need to go look at my developer thing here. Oh, I can just do this. Well, this goes to another question. Somebody's asking about images and they don't want them stolen. We have a built-in right-click saving disabled mode, which is, you know, it at least discourages people from saving the images that are on your website. But as you go in, I'll just, you know what, it might be easier just if you see how a website like this would work, kind of how it looks, and I'll show you how it gets different. In the case of this gallery, we have an option where you can put, we call it just gallery introductory text. So, but the idea is before a gallery, you can enter text or even a page like this that has something about it. But that's really important. Anytime you can put text about it, that's going to help with the search engines. All right. So then as you go through it, it's funny because if I can move this thing.
Does putting alt text on the photos help in any way?
Alt text? Not really.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't hurt it, but they don't give as much emphasis as they used to. I'll put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be that the alt text, there's a little tag that goes inside of a page. And we put alt text that's just your copyright. By default, we put that in there.
Okay.
So people always know that, but no, that's not that big a deal. In this case, it's more important. If I look up, I'll just make sure. I don't have captions on these. I think. Where did I put that? I'll show you another example, but anywhere here where you could put a caption, that's going to help. And another trick we do is some people, they really want to get certain things emphasized. You can actually set up a gallery and put a lot of captions with each image, but not have the gallery live. So the idea would be you go create this gallery, you put all these great informative captions in there. At the same time, you have it on your site, but it's not available as a link, but you can still link to it. So the search engines can actually index that. We can put a hidden link in there that makes them index it, but it wouldn't show up normally for a person who's just visiting your website. So there's a lot of tricks you can do about that. But even the title of your galleries, you know, that's really important. Things like that. That will help out a lot. So,
I have a quick question. So
Yeah, please.
you were talking about the Ken Burns, like opening screens, home screens, where they have the large images. Does that mean you're sort of killing yourself in terms of search engine optimization if you use that?
Well, not completely. And, you know, things are changing a lot. So it's funny, in some ways, just the homepage itself is not as important as it used to be. It used to be that you'd almost want to create a homepage. In fact, they even got in, a lot of people got into putting everything on one page, you know, and we've done that too, where we just put all this information on one page. It's not as important as it used to be, and they index the inside pages a lot better. They get different importance. But as an example here, let's say that I wanted to change this into what would be the Ken Burns effect. So if I took one of these, well, let's see here. Actually, we've got an option here where you can actually have text on the homepage. And if I use this, I just go and pick this option and that updated. And if I go look at the website now, go look at the homepage and it turns it into this, then you've actually got that text in here. Now, the other thing we do on some of the other homepage options, you can still have the full screen, but if you scroll down through it a little bit, you'll actually see that text on the bottom. So we just basically take care of that. So you can have both. I guess that's the answer to your question.
So a question I have is, how do you find people, do they like having this enter screen where you have to find that enter button at the bottom? Or is it, you know, it seems for a while people made these popular and then they weren't popular. You know, just jumping right into the regular website or having a homepage first, is you find different engagement?
You know, well, you know, everybody seems to like it differently. So if I mean, for instance, if I turn this off, the other default option that would come up would be, if I reload this, we're back to here. But actually, and
Right.
use the Ken Burns effect within the slideshow. Now we can take an inside page. So for instance, if you wanted, you know, that page we just looked at before, the style page. If you want this to be the homepage, we can just make this the homepage. So you can pick any page you want on your website, and you just say, hey, we want that as the homepage, and we would assign that as the homepage. So, but that's up to what people want to do, if that helps. You know, personally,
Yeah, I was just wondering if you have any stats on, you know, engagement. Do people actually click through, or do they just hit the homepage and look at it for a moment and then go somewhere else?
Well,
You know, if
they
there's not a menu obvious.
they might. Now we do something else that's kind of sneaky. We basically, if you're editing your homepage, we have a auto enter option. So if we turn on this auto enter, and you can set the time delay on it.
Okay.
So set it to like 6 seconds. And to keep moving this around, sorry. I'll get rid of this.
Hit update.
Yeah, I can't click update on the bottom because I have my Zoom thing here.
Oh,
Oh, I think I can do it.
interesting.
I can do it from up here. This will update it. There we go. Okay, so now if I look at the website. Now, after about 6 seconds, I think it's going to jump. Let's see. I counted right.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the other option, which I kind of like that idea. You know, then they get a little slideshow, and then, you know, if they don't know what to do or they're not engaging, it actually pushes them into the rest of the website, and then we can
Nice.
push them into any page they want. Okay, but these other pages, you know, your informational pages, that's where you're going to get your big SEO. You know, and it's really important. I think a lot of people, they just say, well, I'm going to put up some images and I want people to see what I'm doing, but they don't really think about the text, you know. So that's where you should use informational pages to do that. And then in our system, you can go create and edit other pages. So for instance, we just made an about page to look at here, but if you're doing a new page, let's say I'm going to go create a new page. I'll just click this. Now, when you're in here, it's just a blank slate, but we can start with a template. So we can actually, the whole thing just sets you up, gets you started towards, make a form. Let's say you want to put images in. So it gets you started with this, and you can just go in and start editing the text. You know, change the headlines. We get you started with actually having an image in there. In this case, I could just take, I could take one of the thumbnails here and use that as an image. You can imagine, so you can create these pages really easily. But again, for SEO, I mean, this is stuff where you really have to pay attention to this.
Mhm.
I was talking about different heading sizes. So, you know, by default, different heading sizes get sizes up here. But again, that's SEO. That's what the search engines look for. And we have a section called SEO here where it basically it breaks it down to the things that are really important for your website. So when you think about it, the first thing the search engines look for, or they used to, you know, this changes all the time, but you know, it's called the site title. It shows up, we call it the browser title bar. So for instance, if you look on the top here, it says style images of the world. So this changes as you go through here. So this will say images of the world. Well, that's important because, you know, it's kind of hidden. It'll show up in the tab up here, but it's actually really important for the search engines. Now if you use a logo, so if you want to upload your own logo, you can still have what's called an image alternative. You can put that in. And then you get into the meta description. And I think he asked about, you know, those sort of tags. So you want to put in a really good long description about what you do, but sort of long, but really specific in terms of what it is you do. You don't want to just say, you know, I photograph all the important subjects of the world, you know, including, it doesn't work that way. You know, you really define your specialty, your location. The more specific you can be, you know, specific geographically, it just helps a lot. And we do a lot of work with people who want to be found, but it takes us a while usually to go through and figure out what it is they actually want to be found for, or, you know, how it is they might show up better in the search engines. You know, and once we define that better, we can make it work. So that helps a lot. Other things you need to do is, it's funny, one thing it's really important, if let's say you have a studio or a location, you should have it in Google Maps. So when you go into Google Maps, you can actually establish a business location. And put that in. Then there's tags for Google verification codes that have to do with that. So you have to set up your own webmaster tool. It's not that hard, but there's just a lot of tools that we help you with, and anybody who's creating a website should be able to do that.
Mhm.
And then we've got a lot of search tips just as you go through to think about what's going on with that. Are there any other big questions with search engine stuff that I'm not answering?
I'm just gonna, you tell me if I'm wrong or right. I've had a professional website, same company, since 2005. While I've paid attention to SEO and keywording and all those things across the years, somewhere along the line, I realized that I'm just no way ever going to be more than just more of the clutter out there. So I really don't worry about search engine optimization. I do all the things, but it's not a biggie for me. I've always just used my website as the place to send people to. Once they've met me or know of me for one reason or another, on my business card or my emails, and now with social media. And I just now Googled things that people would look for that I would be in. And I'm nowhere in the first pages, and I'm looking at what's there, and it's ads and agencies and everything that are SEO'd for things that I would otherwise be known with. So maybe I'm wrong and right, and that maybe chasing SEO for me is not really a big deal.
Well, actually, I think you're probably right. I mean, for most people, it's probably the situation, and having your website more as you lead people to from other places is really the most important thing to think about, unless you're really specific. So if you live in Omaha, Nebraska, if you're an advertising photographer in Omaha, Nebraska, that's something you could be found for and probably come up on page one. The one thing I didn't mention that's really, really important, people don't understand this generally, but you need a lot of links going to your website from other websites. So Google thinks you're more important if you have a lot of what's called incoming links. So the more links that you can get going to your website from other places, and especially they call them relevant links. So if, let's say you shoot dog photography, well, if you had a lot of links coming from dog sites to your site featuring dog photography, that's huge. So if you get I don't know if dogs.com is a big website, but if you had a link coming from their website featuring you as a photographer, that would just, that would push you way up in the search rankings. So a lot of it's almost hidden things you never think about.
But do you need permission from the other website owner to do that link?
Well, they would have to place that on their website. So that would be up to them. So you would have to contact them and somehow get a link to your website. So we have a lot of people the more entrepreneurial type people out there about this, they really just contact a lot of other websites and get them, maybe they'll even share a link back. So maybe they'll establish a page where they would then have a link to their website from your website. So kind of, an exchange sort of thing. There's a lot of ways.
I've always just paid attention to more of what my website looks like and what's on it than trying to, like I said, do the keywording and the SEO.
But I've always been told, and I follow that this whole thing with the internet is akin to Velcro. It's hooks and it's loops. And the loops represent your keywords, and the hooks represent what the person on the other end types in for a search. And if those hooks and loops match up, then you connect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. It's hard though. I mean, it's just really hard. And it's so much harder now, it's competitive. So and it's almost like, I almost feel like you're fighting a losing battle anymore because there's just so much information out there. So the idea of having it, especially, I mean, to have an Instagram account, I don't know how many of you have Instagram accounts, but
Mhm.
that's a big deal. You know, I mean, I hate it. I still don't have an Instagram account. I hate Instagram. And I hated Instagram from the start because they ran square pictures. They cropped my pictures square. And it was like, F you, I'm not dealing with this, you know. So now I think it's normal size images, but now, like, but it's so important. I mean, that's where people go to look for pictures, and you know, even people who might hire you, they're in there or they just see it. So you're having the Instagram account and those things then linked back to your website. That's, to me, that's the way to go these days in terms of free advertising.
Do the search engines also look for mobile, how well things display on mobile devices? Is that an important thing today?
That's a great question. They do. Well, there's a lot here. I could probably spend 5 hours telling you everything I've thought about recently. If you'll notice, one thing that's important on a web page, if you look at, I don't know if you can see up here, but I'm going to highlight up at the top where the URL is. There's a little lock next to it. So if you click it, it says connection is secure.
Right.
Well, one of the big problems has been a lot of people who developed their websites years ago, nothing was so-called secure. And when it's secure, that means it's HTTPS. And there's an actual certificate that's generated that makes your website appear as secure. So we developed a system where we actually generate the secure certificates for the photographers, or you know, anybody who's an artist, anybody who uses their websites, who do that automatically, don't charge for it. But if you did that on your own, the last I remember from Google, they're charging you $250 to $300 a year just to have a secure socket layer or a certificate. And even then you have to get somebody to install that on a web server and make that whole thing work. So you'll notice as you're going through a lot of this, there's just so many websites are not so-called secure that way. So, but that's actually a big part of the way you get established as, you know, a website that's going to get indexed properly. At the same time, you're asking about mobile. So actually, I just put this up just so you could see. Let me just do, I'll hide others. So I took that same website. We have a mobile option. So you can actually choose different ways your website's going to look on mobile. You could have it look kind of like our browser looks, or with the mobile, we know that somebody's using mobile. In this case, we come in here. Oh, wait a minute, I have to go in Safari, play like it's iPhone. So if it's an iPhone or an iPad, it would look like this. It's a little different. And we have the typical pull down menus, the way that shows up. But all the pages then flow automatically. So, and you have to remember, the latest stats I've seen indicate that about somewhere between 65 and 75% of all traffic goes through a phone now, right? So if somebody's looking at your images and your website, they're probably on a phone. So it better look really good. So that's what we do too. And you know, that just happens automatically.
Yeah.
But these are the kind of things that, now this is one layout that shows up, which I like this a lot. To my idea is, this is the way people work. You know, they're sitting there on the phone and they're just like scrolling down through it. And then here again, you know, the captions will show up. If you're selling your images, they'll show up that way. I think, trying to remember here. Oh, we also have an option for purchasing. So you can set it up. It's got its own cart built in. So if you want it, this is just for you selling your own prints or your own work. It doesn't hook up to any other system. But if you want to ship them out or do whatever you want to do, you can set this up. And this hooks up to a PayPal cart. And the cart's right there.
So this is all self-fulfilled.
Exactly. Self-fulfilled. Yep. And in fact, we even have a card icon. So it'll, in this case, it'll show what's in there. So that'll work. The other thing it'll do, if I think I set this up a couple different ways. Let me just go back and I'll show you the next one. I think this one I set up with a, so if you don't put any pricing information, people could also just contact you through the website and get information, and they could put in their name, email address, but it'll actually, they could ask you questions or, you know, see if you want to sell that image, and they could do it directly from the website.
Mhm.
But there would be no direct sale through there, and it would just send you an email.
Nice. There's a question popped up in the chat, thanking you for the presentation and asking how many keywords do you recommend for each photo on a website?
Keywords for each photo. Well, that's, well,
It's better to ask about the quality of the keyword than the quantity. And that comes from a friend of mine, Seth Resnick.
I would agree with him, but that also gets kind of strange. So how are you going to put the keywords up there? You know, I mean, how does that work? So in a sense, to me, the best way to do a keyword is in the caption. So you could literally, you could sit here and keyword these. So, you know, I could type in, you know, children, hands, whatever, you know, and you could do this for all your image. And it may take you a while, but it's actually really important if you want to do that.
But
So-
there's also different sections of what you're showing right now.
Mm-hmm. So what, yeah, exactly. So the fact that this gallery is named family, that's a start. But probably a bigger issue here would be you really want to have some introductory text with that gallery. And, you know, you could also, you just want to make this something where people find it. You could put keywords right there in the intro text, and that would show up before the images actually do. That's a nice way of doing it. And again, it goes back to this other idea I had about, you could just create a gallery that's nothing but keywords in the captions, but it wouldn't be normally accessible to people except through another link. It's almost like what I call a hidden link, and that would then get indexed and potentially show up in Google also. So I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, Paul is asking maybe the fewer is better, that are more concise being better. And I think that's pretty much what Jeff just said. It's the quality of the keywords, not how many there are.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
Just to finish your
Yeah.
last point. So do you make this hidden page, just you create it the same way, but you just don't make it live?
Yeah, if you want, I'll show you an example here. So
Yeah,
let's say I did this. I'll just click update here. What I can do in our system, you can make your galleries active or inactive really easily here. So we just have a series of little buttons down here. So that gallery, I was just showing you the family gallery. Right now it's active. If I click this little yellow button, it now is inactive. So if I go to the website, now family was over here on the left, but if I reload the page, family is no longer there, right? So that's just what a normal viewer would see.
Right, but it would still be indexed?
Well, what I would do is what I would do, I'll just show you the process. So now it's active. So I would go to the website, I'd reload it. I'd go to the family section. So here's that gallery. I would just go up and copy the link to it. I'd go back into the setup. I would make it inactive. Off of the homepage, there's some text in here. What I could do is I could just say, oh, I could even make this a link from his name. I could copy, just highlight it. I could make a link from the editor and use the link tool. I could say, paste this in, and I'll make it a new window just for fun. Now it doesn't look different, right? But when I get done and I go back to the website, I go to the home page. This is what I just highlighted before. So it looks exactly the same, right? But if I click it, it goes to that gallery. So you imagine that inactive gallery is then a link from the home page. Does that make sense? So you
No,
can have
because it's active and people could click on it though, right?
Well, it's only active because it's a link from those words.
Right, it's not showing in the menu anymore.
Exactly. So it's not part of the portfolio normally. The
Right.
things that show up in the menu are the items that are active, or what we call them active. The other, it's still accessible, but it's just, it will be hidden from the menu.
Right, but you really won't want people clicking on that.
On this?
Yeah, would you?
Oh, I'd be fine with it. I mean, you're trying to get it into one way or the other. Somehow Google has to have a link to click from. You can't just have a random page show up without, a link to it.
Okay,
So
all right.
Google's always establishing its indexing through the links.
So
Okay.
its crawlers need to be able to find it.
Got it,
Exactly.
thanks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and Jim is pointing out another thing that, Google looks for keyword stuffing. If you have too many words in there, it's going to downgrade you.
Yeah, exactly. You want to be specific, so be precise about it, and that you're going to have better luck if you're only, the page is just about Boston Terriers, that you can get pretty specific about Boston Terriers, for instance. But if it's about dogs, it's really hard to get a good listing for dogs. I mean, just as an example, the more specific you get, the better. Okay, that'll help out.
I have a question. When you were
Yeah,
embedding those words underneath the little icon, once you publish that page, don't those stay embedded? And when you do a search, don't they come up on the site?
You mean the link to that so-called hidden gallery?
Sure.
Sure. They would come up somewhere, but that's the whole idea, is you want to make them available in Google.
Right, but wouldn't it automatically happen just by when let's say you're going through your different icons like you had on that page. You're typing in your keywords that you had under each image. Once you publish that page, aren't they embedded because you've already linked it to, let's say, that page, I forgot what you called it. But aren't they already linked there?
Well, the only way they're linked there would be through the menu bar, in this case on the left, right? So it has to be a link to it from somewhere. In this case, that was called Faces, I think. But it's not on the menu bar. So what we've done is just that's why I call it hidden, but somehow you have to link to it. So again, what we're able to do was to go into the gallery section, or the images, and make that so-called inactive. When you make it inactive, all it does is take it off the menu bar. It's still,
people can still get to it if they have the link.
Exactly.
Right, but I guess my question is then, if you have to make it inactive for people not to see those keywords, like on the website that I use, I type in those words, I link it to my homepage or to whatever page on my portfolio page that image is at, and then I don't have to hide it or display it. It's already, I just link it and it's there. I don't have to worry about going in and
I'm wondering, maybe that's the same idea as what I was showing you, what we're doing here, because we're making that link off of this particular text here, and then that goes to that gallery that's not normally accessible through the menu. The thing I'm doing here is just not making it apparent to a normal person that that's a link, because it doesn't look any different. I mean, it just looks like that's text on the page. It doesn't say click here to go view keywords or anything like that. You don't have to have that. I know it's just kind of a trick. Then some people like to do that. It's not a big deal.
And now I understand what you were doing. I didn't realize that it wasn't a visible link.
Exactly.
Alan,
They click here to view this gallery, but instead it just it's got the name here. Yeah.
Alan.
Yes.
Other than the homepage image, do you have any plans of being able to magnify the images within the rest of the website?
You mean like have a thing you roll over and see detail on it?
I'm sorry?
You mean like to have a little thing where you'd roll over and see detail in it, or?
Yes.
No, although there are, let me show you one thing. Now, you saw the layout we were using, and it's called Prog. So this is our designs page. So if you did a site with us, you would initially pick one out of the designs. Once you're using a design, if you want to change the color, you can do that anytime you want, all your text to it. So remember, it was white. So if I made it, black, and I go back and I reload the site, all that stuff just automatically flows into it.
You're not sharing anymore. We can't see it.
Oh, it's not showing.
I'm seeing it.
I'm seeing it.
Also
I'm
check.
seeing it.
Maybe do you have two windows open, Jack? Maybe one's hidden behind something else?
Yeah, something was hidden. I got it now.
Okay,
Sorry.
cool.
So, you can change colors, but if I want to use another design, I could go through and, no, I don't know. Let's say I wanted to, I like this. This one I like. Some of the colors I don't like. But if I use Santa Fe, this is using one of the thumbnail versions I was talking about. So if I reload this page, it's now going to show up with that other design and with those color themes. And then when I go into a specific gallery, again, there's that initial screen that we had. I have to go down and, oh, sorry. I keep having to move my thumbnails here. Oh, there, that's better. This particular layout actually shows that introductory text or whatever you want to put on the top, and then it shows the thumbnails below. And then as you go in, if you want to see an image, you can do that. And I can actually, oh, it's got arrows on the right and the left, and I can do that. So it'll go through the images.
And will the arrow keys also work for navigation?
Yes, so once you've clicked into it,
Yeah, okay.
I'm clicking the arrow keys right.
But if I wanted to see, for example, the detail in a particular area of the image.
Oh,
is
so
there
you want to
any way-
enlarge the image so you can see the texture or something like that.
Right, if I wanted to see the texture in the hair.
Well, that's a no. How's that? Let me tell you, we've
Is that
thought
a
about.
soft no or a hard no? Is that
That's like-
something that you would
That's
think
a really-
about? Or
That's a really, really hard no, and there's a few reasons for that. One, the biggest reason was early on, well, even now, I think it's kind of impractical to upload an image that's just, it's going to be huge. You're going to have to upload an image that's 5 or 6 times the size of this one. So it's going to be really slow to look at it. The other thing is, we do testing with people. We've tried different things. We showed them on their websites where they can do that. Nobody seemed to want to do that. So we just made a hard no.
But I'm thinking maybe you as a photographer wanting to do that can upload a separate image next to it, so, or inset a close-up of an area that you want to display the texture of.
Yeah, you could do that. Absolutely. You could just have 2 images in a row,
But yeah, I understand what Alan's saying, that you'd have to put a 10 megabyte image instead of a 1 megabyte to be able to zoom in on it. And you're going to really slow the site down.
Yeah, we've got access to the technology, but I
Okay.
didn't want to do it. That
So
helps.
Alan, I got a couple of questions on a personal note. I went from having a very expensive custom designed website that a web geek did for me to then having a simplified website that I could handle in Dreamweaver. And unfortunately, unless you're doing it on a daily basis, Dreamweaver and doing customized web design is not something that I ended up being really good at. So then in order to update my website, which had not been updated for 15 years other than new stuff put up, I went to My Portfolio because I pay for the entire Creative Suite, so I get My Portfolio for free. And I've got an opening page which goes back to my old original hosted custom site that only is the index page. And then when you click to enter, you go to the My Portfolio. Because I have not, I'm not committed to switching my DNS over to the My Portfolio. I still have a lot of custom pages that I've set up over the years, either workshop notes, personal portfolio, also portrait galleries for various people that I'm kind of bringing forward as old baggage. So what I wanted to do was find out from you guys if SiteWelder allows a section of the website to be just totally custom, that you can upload a volume and have that index page within the volume be able to be linked to.
You know, in your case, what I would probably suggest is let's say you used our system and you've got this other website where all those other pages are, pretty valuable. I would probably just set that up as a link on the website, so that
I just closed it for now so we can see you and we can go back to the share in a minute.
oh, okay.
So what you're saying is to maintain the current collection of junk and then start a new kind of more refined, and then just be able to link back to the old site?
Well, yeah, what I was going to suggest is, can I share again?
Yeah.
All right. If I do this, just as an example, let's say we were back, or even this one, this would be a good example. We could do this. Let's say one of these links, instead of the contact link, let's say it was, my old site, that was the name of the link, but that would come up. We could actually set that up over here, put that in an iframe. You could have your whole website, your old website, all those pages actually sitting right in that space. Does that make sense? We could actually, it's called an iframe. We could actually pop the whole website, leave that there, have that there, because you don't really want to mess with that. And you probably don't want to have to try to migrate all those pages either.
Well, that was the problem. On the other hand, I don't really want to be able to have anybody get to those from my kind of front door. I would rather give them the explicit URL.
Okay.
So it would be, like shiwiphoto.com/title of folder/index. And that's how I've been getting and sending out URLs to people to go to very specific pages. So I guess what you're saying is that I would kind of need to drag my baggage along with me to go to SiteWelder and maintain the separate old site while keeping the new site.
We're really good at baggage. We do a lot of baggage. Another guy who's got a lot of baggage is Michael Newer.
Yeah.
Just as an example. So Michael, what's your main domain name? Is it just Michael Newer? I forget.
What's my what?
Newer
Your
Photo.
domain.
Your other one? It's Newer Photo.
Oh, well, it's just Neuler.photo.
Oh, Newer.photo, right. So
Nooler.
Neuwer.
We got it.
So and that's a good example. See, his homepage is actually the portfolio page. So it's not the normal homepage. We actually made a point. He wanted this done. And then it goes into here. And so he's got everything he's got on that site, and all this stuff is coming up. Great. But he's got a second site with us now, which is impressionism.photo. He just recently set this up, and he's really good at this. You probably hire him out to do this. He could do it for much money. He set this up pretty quickly, and it's got all his other work in it.
I love the window shot of the woman.
Thank you.
But I think going back to Jeff's thing, you were saying you could probably have a page that's inactive that has an iframe that contains his whole other website. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it wasn't really what I was thinking of. It might be easier just to link to the other website from a.
Okay.
Yeah, but wait a minute. I'm just got to thinking that there are wedding photographers that have sites, and every time they do a wedding, they have a separate site for the people of that particular wedding to go to see the images that they shot.
Well, I'm glad you
It's not
mentioned.
necessarily a second site, but a password protected site, page
Okay.
maybe.
Well, we have two ways of doing that. Some people, they'll do a job, let's say for an advertising agency or whatever.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes people would actually create, they want to go create it in Lightroom, a Lightroom web gallery. And a lot of people are doing that. We offer free FTP. Then we went out and created, we have a module called Pick Proofs. It's included. In this case, this would be a good example of that, a wedding like that. It could be anything, it wouldn't have to be a wedding. But in this case, when we look at the website, there's a link and it's called proofing. This can either be active or inactive. In this case, I just set up a demo so you could see it. The user would have to put in their email address and that password. When they get logged in, they actually see it looks like its own little website. And when they go in, they can go look at the images, get large versions.
Jeff, isn't that what you're talking about?
It probably
No.
is. And you can actually download images from it. You can set it up in different ways so they can just pick their favorites. And once they pick their favorites, they can actually move this. They could assemble all their favorites and then they click download favorites. A message gets sent, but you actually see their favorites. Let's say you wanted just to have a job for anything. They could go through, pick their favorites. They could give you a message and say, on the first image, make it whatever, clean this up. But then it would send you an email and you would get their favorites and just whatever that email is that they sent you. And then they would get in this case, they would get a link to a zip file right on the website. And they could get the whole images downloaded if they wished. I mean, it's very, there's a lot of options you can do with it, but yeah, we offer that. That's another thing you can do. So that's already actually built into it.
I would like, if I could talk for a minute, I'd like to just sort of, in a way, I guess, plug SiteWelder. I'm not a user yet, but I saw on John's website that you were going to be talking. And I thought, oh, how appropriate, because I'm looking to move off of Squarespace. So I went on SiteWelder and I started mocking up my site. And then I had questions and like I started on Saturday. And so Saturday night I had a question. I put it up there. Sunday morning I had an answer. And somebody had written some custom code to make what I wanted happen. And I was kind of shocked. So even I think one of the changes that I asked for, you showed, like there was a purchase button. And I said, I really wanted to say purchase information or purchase info. And bam, the next morning it was changed. So.
Oh, I saw the notes about that. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, exactly. And we can do that.
I've never had any sort of response like this, from any company I've worked with. So this is pretty extraordinary. I have no connection to SiteWelder. I have no connection to Alan. This is the first time I ever saw him, but I don't know. I'm pretty blown away by the capability and how easy it was. I am a former software developer. I spent 20 years developing software, and then I ended up on Squarespace like 5 years ago. And, it's sort of what you want, but never exactly what you want. And I thought, oh, it's going to be so hard to change. Like, oh, I'm going to go through all this nightmare again. And like 2 days later, I think my site's like almost ready to launch. It's like a miracle.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Well, yeah, we think it's really easy to use. I'm always glad to hear it is easy, that way. And yeah, but you're right. Like we have a whole section just called Concierge Customer Service, because it's true. It's like Squarespace. You send an email, you may get an answer with, I don't know how long it takes. You could never talk to a person, but you probably haven't called it. I mean, we have just great phone support. We spend a lot of time.
I want to be able to give SiteWelder an endorsement. I am a client of SiteWelder. All right. I've been with them for, I want to say 5 years. All right. They are there 24/7, 365. That's a fact. And,
Well,
and
wait a
what,
That's not, wait, Michael,
well,
we're not gonna talk to you in the morning.
I type in something or I get on the phone and call and somebody either is there or they call me back. I don't know.
Absolutely.
A good friend of ours, Seth Resnick, he was with a particular company that literally within overnight, they disappeared. And he was,
Dog fart or something.
yeah. And
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
and I
Yeah.
called SiteWelder up and I said, there's a whole group of people that are left without anything. And somebody, I don't know whether it was Alan or whoever, Sandy, but they started making phone calls to find out what was going on.
I remember that, I can't, what was the service? You remember?
Dog bark. That was
There-
dog bark.
That's right, dog bark.
They went up.
Yeah, yeah. I was.
And-
I
those
I
are-
will
had
tell
my
you
site somewhere else.
that I knew nothing about websites, nothing. I don't want to know. I know enough now to make me dangerous. That Alan and Sandy will tell you, and his partner. But one of the things that I was told when I first started was that it's going to take a long time for my original site to climb up to the very first page of Google. This is no BS on my part. I said, you know what? If what they're dealing with in Google is metadata, which is nothing but words, I need to be able to figure out a way of using the language in a different way, but it all means the same thing with what everybody else was trying to do climbing up to the top. And everybody was saying, you know, buy this or get that or what. And I said, you know what? A more sophisticated way of doing it would be the word acquire. And I came up with a line that said, acquire fine art photography. Within 5 weeks, I was on page 1. And I've been at the top of page 1, the top, all right, for the last 5 years. You can do it with acquire fine art photography, impressionism, with abstract, with all of that. I'm at the very top of the Google search. I don't know what I did or how I did it, but it just seemed logical that it had to do with words, keywords, metadata. I don't know. I just did it. Now I'm struggling with my new website to figure out just the name of it is impressionism.photos, because you can't buy singular anymore. It has to be photos. So everybody says, I want impressionism photos, or I want abstract photos. And so I began doing something that I haven't done in decades with an advertising agency, which was marketing, branding. And it all works. I mean, what does Joe Blow out there use to try to find you? Well, impressionism, and they want photos, and so the title makes sense.
Michael, it's more complex than you're making it look. You may use acquire, and then you may go to Google and Google acquire photos, and you may come up at the top of that listing. However, it doesn't matter what you use. It matters what people are searching for.
Well, that's what I was
If
saying.
no one else uses the word acquire, your site may be invisible to the rest of the world. It may be the #1 listing when you Google it, but it may not ever appear when anybody else Googles it. Because if everybody else uses purchase or buy or something else, you're not going to be there.
You know what? Here's the issue. Engineers like you say that it's impossible for a bumblebee to fly.
No, I don't.
Let's get off this topic,
And the
though. Let's go
reality
back
is,
to
have you ever been
SiteWelder.
bit by a bumblebee?
Alan,
Well-
I have questions for you that are coming in, such as What is it like to convert from someplace like PhotoShelter to SiteWelder or from Squarespace to SiteWelder? Do you have tools for that, or is it a major process?
Well, it's not, we don't just convert that, that really wouldn't be possible. If I
Right.
can, though, let me show you how easy it is to upload and create galleries, because that's basically what you're doing. When you set something up with us, you do a demo site. In fact, I'd suggest anybody who's interested, just do a demo site. Anything you put into the demo becomes your real site if you want to go with us. But when you go in, let's say you're going to create a new gallery. So let's say I'm going to call it my animal crackers, because I actually have the images here. You create a new gallery. Now when you do that, I put an X, I'll change it later. So you just go select the images. I go to the Finder, and I got some on the desktop, and in fact, what I did, I called them Animal Crackers exports. And I exported these from Lightroom. So I optimize them. If you guys are interested, I can show you how to do this the best possible way.
Yeah.
I just get them, I drag them up here. So I got like 20 images. I click upload images. And it just starts cranking them through. The other thing that's good about it, if you want to put optimized images up to kind of the right size, that way the whole process goes a lot quicker. So I think it's going to do almost 20 images here.
And it'll populate in the exact order of the alphanumeric of the name.
Yes. And then also there's an option here. If you put new images in, you can have them go at the end of the gallery or the first of the gallery. You'll see in a second why that's important. Let me get this out of here. So yeah, this was the first one. It goes all the way through. Now, if I want to change the sort order, I just go drag it.
Right.
And you just.
And can you auto-populate the caption using a description tag?
I mean, from the original image or?
From the image,
So-
yeah.
No.
Yeah, so in Lightroom, can a tag be brought along?
Well, no, not really. We actually pull in all the information, the file information, but we don't do that. So people just enter their own captions at that point. Because we found that most people, that's not really what they want to do. They get really specific about captions and, but we do maintain it. If enough people ask for it, we could actually populate it back in, because.
All right, well, I'll switch to SiteWelder if you auto-populate the captions with the description that has been embedded in the image.
Alan, I'm going to tell you something. You want him to be on SiteWelder. You want this wonderful SOB to be on SiteWelder.
Well, I'd be tempted because Jeff is such a good photographer anyway. I know your work. So
I would change it over if you cancel Mueller.
I mean, to tell you the truth, that's the kind of thing that people ask for it. And it may be, I'll tell my tech partner about this, and he gets excited about it. He goes, "Oh yeah, I'll do that." So,
Yvonne is asking a question there. What's the maximum size of photos on your typical website? And do you use image compression plugins such as Short Pixel or something similar?
Okay, great question. And
so I think you have a default size for your images, right?
Well, yeah, and I'll show you how this works. When you upload an image, and everything needs to be in JPEG format. Just as an example here, I'll go to images, I'll click on upload images, and it'll tell you here what size to put up. And we suggest 1920 pixels maximum width, 1200 maximum height. If you upload them bigger, they'll actually go down to that size. And the way that works in our—
What do you mean they go down to that size? You resample downward on the fly?
Yes. So what happens is, let's say you upload an image that was 3000 pixels wide and 2000 pixels high. We would keep that original image. We keep a copy of whatever you put up. We have it in its own little folder. But then we take a new version and we scale it down to whatever maximum width and height you want. Now—
And you downsample with what algorithm?
I don't know what it is. It's a program called Image Magic. And
Well, that's actually a better downsample, because some places actually do a bilinear or a nearest neighbor downsampling, and that sucks.
yeah, you know, I'm not the expert on all this. I know how bad it can get when you resample images, but I just love the way images look. I've never been disappointed, and nobody is at this point. The only issue I would tell you is that when you save your images, you really want to have, let me see if I can, yeah, I've got Photoshop open. Here's an example. I've got that original image. And this image, if you look at the image size, if I put in pixels, it's 2941 by 3810 high. That's as big as I could get back in like 1996 or whenever I created this. But there's the size. When I uploaded it, you know, it's going to go down obviously to whatever the maximum width and height is. But the big deal, one thing you really need to do, if you don't do export from Lightroom, but if you do it from Photoshop, you can do save for web. Sorry, they changed the whole thing. It's this one. So when you do save for web, they actually convert it with, you know, the sRGB color profile. Most important thing to know when you're saving a web image for the web, you've got to have it in sRGB. And if it's not, you're really kind of screwed. So what, you know, we suggest you save it in Lightroom or do it this, you know, manually like this. When you're ready to put your images up, we scale them down to whatever you want. So in this case, that the normal is this, we call it large, 1920 wide, 1200 high. So if it's a bigger image, it's going to get scaled down to this size. You can actually change that here if you want. I'm sorry, you can do it here.
There's another thing that I would add, and Alan, I don't know if you know this, you can actually prove it to yourself by testing. In this day and age of huge fucking megapixel cameras, if you downsample from your native original file down to 1920, I used to use 2K as the operative because of 2K displays. But if you downsample from your megapixel, so it's 45 megapixel down to 2K wide in one downsample routine, you're throwing away a huge amount of data with no control on how that is thrown away except for the algorithm. Now, Photoshop and Lightroom have greatly improved downsampling algorithms compared to the old days, but they still suck. And so what I discovered and wrote about in the image sharpening book is that if you downsample using bicubic, not bicubic sharper, but bicubic, to get to within basically a single downsample process of your final output size, meaning 2K, and then do the final downsampling, you may actually want to sharpen or blur certain areas of the images in the interim downsampling, because diagonals and circles sometimes get built-in jaggies because of the algorithm. And if you downsample it using bicubic to get within a single 50% and then use bicubic sharper for the final downsample, you'll end up with a better result than if you downsample the entire big file to 2K in one downsampling.
So
And
that's
I've actually
something. Yeah, that's really, you're way above my pay grade. But
well,
I mean,
no, but it's important for some things, particularly where you develop an interference pattern or moire from like window screens or any kind of texture, particularly if you're doing architecture that has repetitive patterns. And if you downsample it in a kind of a more intelligent method, you can actually end up with a much better result at the final display on screen. Because basically, you also have the problem of moire, less of a problem these days because you know, LED displays are so much higher res. But anyway, that's something that I don't know if you've delved into, but for people that have really huge files, and I've found this particularly in the case of really big panos, you know, where I've got an image that's 40,000 pixels wide. I would never downsample that to 2K and one resampling.
Right. I think you're saying is that maybe the photographer should do the resample and downsize themselves to the size it's going to be on the site.
Well, yeah, at least to get to the native size
Size.
of the site. In other words, what is it, 1920?
By
Well,
1080.
that's our suggestion, yeah, but
Yeah.
no, I agree.
Yeah,
And
but
then,
if you download to that, then you won't be resampling anybody's image. Is that correct?
well, exactly. We don't no, we don't.
Okay,
And
so it would be
Get it down.
dynamically resampled to fill the page, whether it's on the computer or on a device.
yeah,
Mhm.
so we just basically came up with a 1920 size because that's like the size of a, what, 21, 23 inch monitor. You know, it's just,
HD.
yeah.
Although now a lot of people have 4K and 5K, and soon it'll be 8K.
Well, that's
Yeah.
another interesting thing about it. Like, you know, there's Retina screens. When I make a logo, I always do them twice as big as when I'm going to output, because on a you know, it's sharper then. It looks better. But now in photographs, that's a weird thing because people really aren't doing that so much. You know, potentially you could, and we would sample it down, but that's just, it's a little different on a photograph than it is with a specific logo. It all gets a little complicated. I just suggest you get them down as well as you can. And then when you're ready to upload, let me just go back in here so I show you how this.
That's what I do. I always, I always downsize myself, you know, on my photographs to 1920 before putting them on my website. And then I compress them using short pixel. You have 3 levels of compression, and you can see the before and after image. And if it is acceptable, you can even use the highest compression rate, which is about 90%. And most of the time it is pretty good. And the fact is that it accelerates your website.
Well, that's a great idea. What I do personally, if I got a bunch of pictures, I just put them in Lightroom. And when I click export, it sets up the whole thing in terms of the width and height for resizing.
Mm-hmm.
I put in those numbers, but whatever their output sharpening is, I say sharpen for screen. I don't know what it does, but for me, it works really well. And it just puts a little extra, you know, in terms of whatever.
Well, Alan, you can thank Bruce Fraser and myself for that. No, Pixel Genius, the company that Seth Resnick, Bruce Fraser, myself, Andrew Rodney, and Mac Holbert and Martin Evening, we basically sold our output sharpening to Lightroom and Camera Raw for print and for screen display.
Oh, really? Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you, because it works great.
You're welcome.
It does work great.
That's why you want Jeff Shiwi as a client.
Lightroom also has an adaptive downsampling. And this is the thing that I was saying. It will, depending upon the original size and the final output size, it will interpolate between bicubic and bicubic sharper to get an optimal downsampling.
Wow, that's really awesome. Well,
I want to go back
much
to some
better than in Photoshop doing a single downsample.
I'll show you what we do on our end though. And this is something I've never seen this done before. You know, I try not to toot our horn. I should probably toot our horn better, but this is the coolest thing it does. This is the image library. So basically when you upload an image to a gallery, you can go look at it in the galleries. So I go into that Animal Crackers. Here's the images, but they exist in, we call them the image library. So they're always available to different galleries. Everything that gets uploaded is over here. When they're over here, we actually identify them. Anything over, I think if it gets above 500K, you can look at it below and it'll show you that it'll be in red. It'll say, in this case, 570K. Well, we give you the option to recompress it. So when it got uploaded, and we even say your last compressed version was a setting of 75. So, you know, on a scale of 0 to 100, And you know, that gets really interesting too, because if you save an image of a beach scene, for instance, you know, with a lot of sky in it, you can probably go to almost 100, and that image is going to be pretty small. But you get an image like this where there's a lot of detail, well, it's not going to compress very well. And in this case, it's at 570K. You can't really tell here, obviously, but you know, I'm looking at this. I can take this same image. With our tool, you can go through, I can say, I'm going to go to 40. I could even go to 30. I'll hit recompress. Our system recompresses this. Now it's at 263K. And if I go look at it, of course, again, we're doing this online, you can't tell. You could play around with this. It looks great because it's a very complex image to begin with. Yep. And you can do it at a lower setting. What we do is when you recompress an image, we keep the original image. We always keep the original image. So if you change the compression on it, we always go back to the original and recompress it off the original. We're not recompressing off that same image over and over and over. We're always going back. We're taking your original image that you uploaded and changing it from there. But it's just it's a great tool because you can just get your website to load faster if you find it's not loading very fast. Mm-hmm. We had a lot of people, we'd look at their images and they're like 1.2 megabytes and they're saving it at 100%. And I'm like, oh my God. They would call us up and complain about how slow their website was running. So this just gives you a really cool way to go through and tweak your speed. So
I've got a couple other questions coming in from the chat. Again, Yvonne, who's actually going to be one of our guests in a couple of weeks here, is asking, do you support a landing page that doesn't have a main menu? And maybe you could clarify that question, Yvonne.
Yeah, for sure. One of the key elements about most websites for photographers is that you cannot have pages without having the menu at the top or on the side. While most of the time when we want to use landing pages, you know, to attract people from Instagram or from Facebook, and we want them to do only one thing, to hit the button on that landing page, which is whatever you want it to be, but we don't want to display the menu on that landing page. So is that something that you support with SiteWelder?
Well, yeah, absolutely. If you go to our homepage section, by default right now, if I'm looking at this particular, let me go back and I'll view the site so we can see it. So right now it's showing this version. It's got the menu on the side. A few different ways of doing this. I think in this design, let me see here. Let's see. No, it's actually okay, that's different. I won't get into that. For all our websites, if you want to show it as we call it a splash screen homepage. Now, in this case, I've actually uploaded a series of images that would go on the homepage. You can pick a different layout. So let's say you wanted, this one as an example with no links on it. And we call it the Ken Burns effect. And if I go back now and I go to the homepage, I get that. And I can't see it down here, but it's got the interlink in the bottom right. And then we've got it jumping automatically into the rest of the site. So I may change that and say, change it to just turn the auto enter off. So then when I hit the homepage again, it would just sit there and it would just keep looping through the images on the homepage. That's one way of doing it. And then if they click on the middle of the image, it'll go through. It jumps into the site. Or if
you can mix that with the remaining of your website, which remains the same as it was before.
What do you mean?
You can do that only for, let's say I want to build 5 landing pages because I have 5 marketing strategies I want to use on Facebook or on Instagram, but I don't want people who go on my website to see those landing pages because I use them only for marketing purposes to attract them to do a specific action on my website.
Right.
Well, that would be an example of using one of these other so-called hidden pages. So you would just create another page. So maybe it's probably like a gallery. I'm going to guess it's like a gallery page. And so
it'd be a gallery page with one image on it.
what I would do, let's say you wanted, well, this, I'll just use this as an example because we already have the intro text. So, you know, you could put whatever you wanted up here. You could say something about, you know, the following is a series of really great images about whatever it is you want to talk about, stock car racing. You could put all this up here, and then you've got the images. Then if you go in, all you have to do is leave it active for a minute. And then you've got, and in this case, you've got all the thumbnails down below. If you just copy the link up here, and then I go back in the gallery section and I make it inactive.
Okay.
Now, when I go back to the website and I go inside, style is not going to be there. It's not part of the portfolio section anymore. But you can, you know, that will be your link from Instagram or Facebook. You just pop in it, and that would take them there. That'd be a possible option.
Good.
I would like that, especially with, you know, especially like it because you can put all the introductory text or some kind of thing to do.
Cool.
And the other cool thing about that is when you're doing, let's say I wanted to create intro text here, you can use one of these templates, and there's a little, I think that's the, which one is it? It's the, this is different, it doesn't have the big button on it. There's a template button. Oh, it's this one. Pretty sure. Where's my template? Oh, here it is. Pretty sure. Sorry. I know it's, I just don't know where it is right now. Oh, there it is. It's in gray. But we have these content templates. So, you know, that'd be a great place just to, you know, in fact, you could even do something like a, like one of these, you know, and I could go down and then just adjust it. I could change the image that's in here and just go take a big image. I'm going to take anything here. There's going to be a ton. I'll just select one. Say I want that to be the image, and I choose that. Oops. There it is. Select. And I'm going to save it. And then when I go to the website, as an example here, that was under, what was that under? Oh, it was under faces, wasn't it? What did I just do? Oh, I was in an inactive gallery. I'm sorry. That's what happens when I do this. I'll make family active. Right now it's inactive. I'll just click here and that makes it active. Now when I go back to the website, here's family again. And if I made this smaller, you could see it better, but it actually is. See where that big image was, and you could put a headline, you know? You can do some really cool stuff with it. That's kind of my point though. You could make a nice landing page out of that. Okay.
So get a question. Another question came in from Steve Sherman. Does SiteWelder support transitioning from a custom WordPress site? And how difficult is the process on either side? And does your annual pricing include hosting options?
Well, again, when you convert to ours, you're going to have to recreate it in a sense. We're not going to be able to take a WordPress site and just convert it into our system because you'll need to re-upload the images and some of the pages. So that's kind of a no that way. In terms of, what was the second part again?
Does your annual pricing include the hosting option fee?
Oh, well, it includes hosting. So, I mean, we host, everything is done that way. So, I mean, for instance, just I go to our pricing page. It's really simple. It's not there's not much going on here. It's, oh, we still have that. Yeah, well, you could pay it. We still offer that. Some people pay 2 years in advance, but it's basically just either pay monthly or annually. If you pay annually, it's $32 a month with an advance payment, and monthly, if month to month is a little, it's $6 a month more. But that's completely covering hosting, and if you want to upload FTP stuff, it includes that also.
What about email?
No, we don't offer email. We used to offer email, and then we wasted a year of our lives because it's such a nightmare. You don't want to ever offer email. It's just awful. It's got
do you help porting over, you know, the URL over?
Absolutely. So we handle,
because that could be a nightmare.
No, they almost always handle that for people. So let's say you register your domain name at GoDaddy. If you give us your username password, we can go right in and make all those changes and point it, make it show up. Usually we can do it usually within 4 or 5 hours, and it's just live. So, you would create a demo site and do the whole thing. And then when you're done, you just get it. We just move it over.
Could you show the blog feature also, Alan, on yours?
Sure. We have a blog feature, which is, so basically when you come in, we just prompt you to create your first entry. So you give it a name. When you go in, it's similar to the way the other ones look. It's pretty easy to create the entries. But just to show you how it looks, I have some demos up here. This is one we did. I'm gonna move my little thing here. So we just uploaded some images. Then it's got, as you go through, it's got that. It's pretty basic. I mean, it's, it just shows each entry as you go through, and then it's got a share button. And then it's got the name of the entry, the date, and you can put in captions. Again, use the kind of templated idea about different pictures, put in more text. Oh, I got to show you this if you're interested. In fact, I should have shown you this before. Anybody who shoots video, we have a really nice way to integrate video. This is Steven Sheridan. He does a lot of work. You can create video galleries. So a gallery can be either photos or videos. So we have a way of automating the videos that come in from a Vimeo album. So in this case, he just uploaded his videos for his commercial into a specific album. And when that takes a second, it's got to load the Vimeo stuff. But basically, they kind of auto-populate here. Mm-hmm. And then when you play them, they actually just play right on the screen. It's funny, I'm getting a slow Vimeo connection right now. And then you can just play the video. So you can see those. Oh. So that's pretty cool. The other thing you can do is, what I like, let's say you want to you uploaded something to YouTube or whatever. I'll just go grab one here.
Well, actually, let's not grab one just because of copyright stuff, but just.
Well, I'm just going to demo it. I'm not going to.
Okay. Yeah. Just show that can be done.
I like the fact that you mentioned that. It means you care about that thing.
On blogs, can you convert a blog from another system into yours, or is it same thing, just have to recreate it?
No, you'd have to recreate it. Some people actually have a separate blog website and they just keep that blog website.
Right.
Blog.
Yeah, I used to have a separate, and then I moved it into my current one, and it'd be a big changed. Yeah.
Sometimes it's worth keeping it separate, because.
Yeah, I learned that over the time.
But what you can do is, for instance, I just copied the URL for that YouTube video. Now, what I could do here, I could actually start with a template. Let's say I did it like a 2-column thing. I think this will work. I just have 2 columns. And let's say I wanted to have a name for it. I just get rid of the text that's here. But you just hit the video button. And you can either paste in YouTube, Vimeo, paste it right here. And of course, now it's not going to show up.
Do you compress the videos too?
I'm sorry?
Do you compress the videos?
No, what we do is we just load them. So it's actually just pulling it in. All we're doing is pulling it in from Vimeo.
Right. You're not storing the video on your site. It stays on YouTube or Vimeo, and you're just displaying it from there.
Right. No, it works pretty easily. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the other thing we can do is, in fact, there's a video link. If you want to, we show you how to set up a video thing. When you create a gallery, if you use Vimeo, let's say you create a new gallery, just call it video. And we just check the little box that says this will be a Vimeo gallery. And you just enter your Vimeo ID, and then it'll actually display the different albums that you've got in your Vimeo account. And then we pull that in automatically. That's how Stephen Sheridan was doing that on his website.
Nice.
That works pretty easily. So that's another nice thing you can do with that. And again, selling, you know, with the shopping cart, what I was telling you about, oh, that's the other thing that's really handy. So I know we've got that turned on as an option. So there will be a button underneath each image and it'll just say edit selling information. So you can enter, the way to make it activate is to put something in this particular field. Now you can have different price list options if you want, or in this case, if I turn them all off.
Wait a minute, Alan, don't come off of that yet.
Yeah.
All these different areas where, you know, what does it say? I can't read it.
Image document title, catalog image number, detail 1, detail 2.
So if you put the metadata in details 1 and detail 2 and 3, it doesn't show up, but it's,
Well, it's not really
part of the site.
Well, let me show you what's gonna, let's say we just arbitrarily made these fields. I mean, they don't really mean anything except what I'm gonna show you here. I'll just call it detail 2. So you can see it. Some people wanted to have more information. So if I go back and style, I need to activate again. So when I go look at it on the website, let's see. If I go back into that particular gallery. Now, I think on the first one, yeah, so we've got the purchase info button is showing up here. And when I click it, remember, I don't have any prices. So instead it shows this form, which has an info request. But if you want to, those different fields I just filled out, they're showing up here. So that's the name of the particular image or, you know, description. And then you've got, those are just fields.
Right. I have a feature request. The detail 1, 2, and 3 fields. I'd like to copy those fields to other images. Like right now, I have to cut and paste them from.
They can do.
It's
Just
the image.
It's a mark.
In here?
Yeah, when you go back to the way you were doing it, yeah.
Well, I know that as an example.
Like right now, so detail 1, 2, and 3. Say I'm doing a whole series, you know, say this gallery is a whole series of images and they all have the same detailed information about them. I'd like to copy that to all of them rather than having to copy line by line.
It would be
Right, like you have the button there that says apply to all images.
Yeah, that's just the prices.
Right,
I'd like
but
to copy the details as well.
Well,
or separately, not as well.
I'll show you what it does do. For instance, right now, if you're doing pricing, so when you edit the prices, let's say I just added one just to show you how this works. I'm just getting off subject here, but sorry. Let's say, and this is what, $2,000 for this. Now, these are all the price list that's always going to be available over here on the right side. Now, if I turned them all on, I could hit apply prices to all images in the style gallery.
Right.
So that auto fills for all those different items.
Which is great, but I'd like to also copy separately. I'd like to copy those details. I'm using it in my own way, and I like to copy those details to all images.
Yeah, well, we could probably do it. It gets a little weird because, like, for instance, you wouldn't want to duplicate the catalog number, obviously.
No, I wouldn't want that, but I would want the details, you know, because that's
Only
why
those three fields.
Exactly. I'd like to copy those separately. I don't want the pricing, but I want the details copied to all the images as well.
You know, you're a real pain in the butt.
Thanks. Thanks.
But what would be particularly useful?
We could pull that off. We could pull that off. Yeah, we could do that.
What would be particularly useful is to be able to have a template that you could save for the actual detail category, so that you could actually propagate the template to all the images and choose which detail was propagated.
Well, that's another level altogether. I mean, the way we would do it is put it in here, and then you would have another button that says apply to all images in the gallery. That wouldn't be too hard. That's kind of going beyond what anybody's ever asked for. One thing we do, like we've got, it says apply document image title to all images in the style gallery.
But why would you want to do that? I didn't understand that at all. I mean, so like every image has a different title, right?
Well, not necessarily, because this is what makes the purchase button show up, is this particular field.
Okay.
So I might just call it, let's say I called it style. It might be easier. And then, leave it a separate catalog number, and I'll click update. Now every image is going to have style in it. Okay. So, that way what happens is by doing that, you're telling each image in the gallery to have the purchase button. Because if you take this off, and if I do this, I think it's gonna take it off. Yeah, now all the images, there's no selling information. So instantly, so this is the tag. I mean, this is the identifier in our system that makes the purchase button show up, is by having something in here. So that's just the way you could generically do it.
So why don't you just change the title of that field? That would make a lot more sense. Now I understand what you're doing, but I didn't, using image document title, it's just intuitively makes me think that every image has a different title. And why would you ever copy that to anything else?
Yeah.
Well, honestly,
but I think
for probably, 95% of people, they actually do want a different title. So yeah, we just left it that way. I like what you're saying. And then that's one of those things that's hard to figure out from a user interface.
Yeah.
standpoint.
So Alan, is there a way for people to contact you offline with feature requests and questions like this?
Oh yeah, all the
I
time.
mean, because this is going a little too specific here.
Yeah.
Well,
I
I'm glad you-
would just say, you don't only have to contact Alan. If you just contact anyone there, they
Yeah.
kind of like solve your problem, like, within a day.
Well,
So we're almost at
that's-
2 hours here. So I'm just going to ask a couple of more questions. Elizabeth was asking, what differentiates it from other sites? Your price might be a little higher than others. So do you have more pro services, or, what makes SiteWelder the one to go to?
well, it's the way to go. First of all, let's assume that they're all great sites, which they aren't. But first of all, what I would say is just the way you display images in our designs. Other sites, you may have to go recreate the whole site. With ours, you can change the design anytime you want. All the information just flows into that other setup, which is really awesome. You can that happens. So that's something you pay for. And we've got a lot of different designs, and as we launch new designs, you've got access to those as well.
Alan, if I could get customer service, it's worth extra money for me. To me, that's always worth extra money.
Well, good. Yeah. And that's really our main thing, is we have customer service,
Well, I have to jump in and say, without any question, everything that you offer and the ease of doing it and so forth, your pricing is perfectly reasonable, if not plain downright cheap. I would, yes.
No, never cheap, less expensive.
Well, you're cheap.
Well, no, that's good to hear. Well, no, that's always been a big question. And I've always wondered about, we were more expensive than a lot of alternatives. And then Squarespace came along, and there's just a lot of different things that they put them out really cheap. Some things for $10 a month. And it just never made sense. We couldn't have made money. Somehow you would have had to just sell so many websites, but then you could never offer customer service, customization. There's just nothing that can really happen at that price point. So yeah, and I actually don't think it's that expensive either. I was just thinking about, what do you spend things on in your life? $384 a year, it's not that much money, that's all. It's actually,
yeah, saving money can be very expensive sometimes.
I get that, but you can put as many images as you want up on our website.
Yeah.
I'm paying more with one of your competitors. Like I said, I've been with them for a very long time, and probably twice as much, I guess. And no, your features are very comparable, if not better. So no, you're very well priced. Don't even think twice about it.
Yeah, I'm going to be converting. I know. This was very informative for me.
Yeah, I'm a definite. I'm converting.
Well, great.
Cool.
Well,
So Alan, we had sent in some questions to you earlier by email. Do you have those in front of you?
yeah, I can bring that up here.
And while you're looking those up, I had a question come to me. Does this site support other languages? Can you do Duo or tri-language site?
Well, that's a very interesting question. We, at one point we thought about the ability to go create different languages within the same thing. And it's really complicated because you'd have to enter the different languages. But with nowadays, but when we've done this, I'll show you George Diebold's site. He had the same issue. And I believe, so let me get this out of here. We can just, I hope it's, yeah, so once you get in here, this is actually customized a little bit. So when you come in here, I think he was doing this. Oh, we can embed it into the menu or wherever. We can do a Google language thing. And a number of people do this. So it'll just translate that whole thing into.
Yeah.
Nice.
So my original site has that throughout, right from the beginning.
Yeah, we can place that into your website, and it's just the Google Translate module. Yeah, we can definitely do that. And that's the way to go for me. Like, it's going to be close enough.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be
Great. Thanks.
Uh,
So let's go back to your keynote there.
I've done downsizing. I think we kind of answered that. I hope we did. The DPI, don't think about DPI that way. Screen resolution is 72 DPI. That's really all you need to think about. There's 70, normally, and I know different monitors are getting different, but the way web browsers think about it, it's all 72 dots per inch. So if you just save your images at that, our suggested size is 1920 pixels maximum width, 1200 pixels maximum height, or you can make them bigger if you want and change the settings in our setup. That works fine. You don't have to really worry about it. And of course, we talked about changing the image size here. And
Yvonne, was there a specific question that you had sent in that you want to touch on here?
Yeah, there was the question about using bilingual keywords and maybe file names for the photos.
I don't remember seeing that one.
Again, that would be really hard with the bilingual captions that way. Other than they just click on the Google Translate, and that would do that automatically.
So what I am doing presently is I am starting to use WPML in WordPress. In fact, what it does is that it creates a duplicate of your website that you translate yourself. You can use automatic translation, but it's not that good for certain aspects. So I translate myself the website in English. And when you select the language, in fact, it's showing you the same website, but the duplicate in the other language. That's how it works. Some aspects of it are dealt with automatically. For example, what you will find in your shopping cart, because those are, I would say, technical words, but for the descriptions of your photographs and the keywords, you have to translate them yourself to have good results. But that's a lot of work.
Well, that's hard. And, that'd be great if they do something that works like that. Even that's going to be pretty hard, I would imagine, just because it gets complicated quickly. But anyway, what we do offer is the Google Translate, so it does do that. I think these are all questions. You had which plugins and widgets do you find the most useful? We don't have plugins or widgets, so that would be like a WordPress kind of thing, which we don't do. We do everything ourselves. Okay. And there's a way to prevent select copy from a blog. That would never be completely, doable, because.
No, that's true. But it's just to minimize the risk.
Right. And again, we have I mean, you could just copy, you know, that's always going to be able to copy. But again, we have right-click image protection, which helps. And also, one thing we do, we really changed this in terms of our images. They're actually, we have layers set on top of images. So even here, oh, you can't drag it here. Some of the browsers, used to be you could just drag the entire image onto your desktop. We'll put a transparent GIF in front of the image. So if they drag it to their desktop, all they're getting is the transparent GIF.
That's good.
Other layouts, we do background images. So you'd have to go into the coding and do about a 3-step process to figure out where the image was, and you can get it.
What about the thumbnail?
The thumbnail, what about those? So,
Yeah, can you drag that?
No.
No, okay.
And they're really small anyway. They're, you know, they're a different version. Create a thumbnail separate from the other one. So that works pretty well. If that helps.
Cool. So Alan, why don't you put your contact info up on the screen then, if you'd like, and we'll wind this down.
Sure. How about if I just do a new slide here?
Sure.
Oh my God. Sorry.
Bullets are okay. We'll understand them.
I want a bullet. That's just dumb. Here, I'll just do text. Here we go.
By the way, all of those techniques to protect images merely slow people down. Anyone who really wants to get an image can get an image.
Sure.
Screenshot.
Yes, sure.
Actually, that's a good point, Stephen, because I was just thinking about it. There was something in my mind was missing, and it was right. I talked to John about that before. You just do a screen snap.
You can always do a show code, and it'll give you the link to the image, and then you go to that link.
Yeah, that's the reason why I don't put images with a resolution higher than 1920 on my website. So if they steal the image, it will be a low resolution one anyway. So they cannot print a 40 by 60 inch print from it.
I don't know what you guys think.
You'd be amazed at what gigapixel AI can do with a 2K image.
Yeah, you'd be amazed at what I can do with a lawyer because all my images have been registered. So I can fix that with my lawyer, no problem.
Well, actually, I haven't talked to them yet, but there's somebody in New York who's doing this for a business, and we're thinking about working with them. They've gotten a lot of money back from this. They represent photographers, and by just working with them through SiteWelder that way. So
as long as it's not Leibowitz.
No.
He's been suspended by about every court he went into these days.
This is a woman, so I can't remember her name right now.
Well, I want to thank you, Alan, and thank everyone for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thursday, we'll be back here with
Alan.
Steve Krongard.
Who I believe also is a SiteWelder client.
Oh, the name's real familiar.
Cool. Well, thank you all.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Alan.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
End the
Miller.
recording.
Yeah, thank you
Alan,
both of you.
Alan, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Give
All
my
right.
regards. Give my regards.
Okay.
Fuck you, Miller.